cold has a sound in these mountains. Pines whisper snow hushes, and somewhere beyond the dark timber, a single note breaks the night. One long rising call that seems to aim straight at the boy's window. He is 15 and alone in a cabin that the town forgot an address halfway between a mailbox and a memory. For a week now, the howl has kept time with the moon. If you've ever heard a sound that felt like it was speaking only to you, what did you do? Did you close the window and pretend it wasn't there? Or did you step outside and listen? Tonight, stay with us. Because behind that sound is a choice, and behind that choice is a truth about wolves that may change the way you see the wild. And if stories like this matter to you, subscribe and help us keep real conservation work in the light, reliable, respectful, and responsible. On the 7th night, the boy kills the cabin lamp. He counts 1 breath, 2, 3, and the howl threads through the trees again. Not 1 voice he realizes, but 2. No more echoes folding on echoes like a choir learning its part. The hair on his arms lifts. He pulls on a flannel, then a coat that used to be his father's, the hem stitched with clumsy thread from last winter. He opens the door to a kind of darkness that isn't empty. It's crowded with cold stars and the possibility of eyes. There's a logging track behind the cabin that turns to ice after dusk. He takes it anyway, boots scuffing frost breath, a little white engine. The sound draws him, but not straight. Wolves rarely travel straight, and neither do kids who've learned to live without asking for rides. He moves through the trees with a caution that looks like ceremony, stopping, listening, stepping again. A mile in the calls knot together, then fall silent. Silence is a kind of guidance out here. He angles toward it. A meadow open snow laid down like a taut drum. In the middle, a ragged fence line shoulders above a buried ditch. The boy's light finds a black shape by the posts, motionless, but tense like a drawn bow. Amber eyes catch and hold. The breath in his throat becomes a small, bright thing. Wolves. Not a rumor, not a bedtime dare. Real as the blood beating in his ears. He should turn around. That's what the pamphlets say, the signs at the ranger station, the teacher with the laminated maps. But the shape by the fence shifts and he sees what the dark was hiding. Steel jaws on a foreleg, teeth of iron buried where fur should be. Beside her, 3 small shadows pups pressed into a crescent like commas around a sentence that can't finish. The howl that brought him here wasn't a call to hunt, it was a call for help. What happens next will surprise everyone who thinks they already know the ending to stories like this. His name doesn't appear on any mailbox yet. Paperwork is slow when adults are ghosts, and money moves like snowmelt still in the cold, gone when the sun comes up. The county knows him as a ward in transition. The school counselor knows him as the quiet kid who draws topographic maps in the margins of his homework. We'll call him the boy, not because he lacks a name, but because out here, names are less useful than choices. The cabin is a leftover from a logging lease, 1 room, and a loft stove, iron-bellied and temperamental. A creek cuts the property on the far side of a stand of willow, where moose sometimes come to test the water's edge. In October, the elk pass through a rolling punctuation of hooves and breath. Coyotes braid laughter along the roadbeds at night, and once last spring, a mountain lion left a long parenthesis of tracks in the mud by the porch. The human world keeps a distant schedule. There's an aid check, a food box delivery, the sheriff's slow drive-by after a storm. In between, the boy has made a small science of staying okay. He is good at listening to the stove's draft to the weather's edge, turning to the way the neighborhood dogs change their chorus when something strange walks the timber. And lately, at exactly the hour when the moon clears the shoulder of Whitecap Peak, he's been listening to wolves. This valley used to be a straight line of rumor. There are no wolves. Then, a question mark. Are there wolves? Then, after a cattleman found calves with bites on their hocks and a hiker filmed a shadow crossing a snowfield. At noon, the valley learned to speak in commas. There are wolves sometimes. Wildlife officers began leaving leaflets on doorways, how to haze, how to secure attractants, how to report sightings without turning GPS pins into poacher maps. At the ranger station, a poster laid out the law in bullet points. Predators aren't problems until people make them that way. The boy reads all of this. He respects it the way a kid respects a river crossing. It's not about fear, it's about physics. The howl began the week the cold arrived for real. Not a movie wolf howl, no syrup, no melodrama. A practical sound, here we are. Here we still are. Sometimes a chorus folded underneath, sometimes a single voice, like a compass needle settling. On the day before the seventh night, the night of the meadow, the boy took a different route home from the store. Late sun flared through lodgepole dust. He noticed bootprints along the fence line by the north meadow, heavier than a hiker's, double backing in a way that read like intent. In the snow beneath one post, a circle of rust told another story. Metal left too long in wet weather, lifted, moved, reset. He had no proof, just the shape of a guess. But he felt the old ache in his chest that comes when something is both wrong and likely. In town, people argue about wolves the way other places argue about weather or politics or sports. A cafe chalkboard jokes, "We serve wolves well done." The feed store sells bells for collars and stocks extra electric netting in spring. The library hosts a talk on non-lethal deterrence and coexistence strategies. Half the folding chairs fill, and the Q&A gets loud around the third question. On the bulletin board, a card from a sanctuary 2 counties over accredited. Transparent. Education programs for schools. The boy took the sanctuary's card not because he thought he'd ever call, but because he likes proof that people can be better than their loudest moments. By the time the snow hardened into a language you could read with practice, squirrel hare mouse neighbor's Labrador, the howls had become a kind of punctuation at the day's end. On the 7th night, that punctuation turned into a sentence that led him to the meadow. Now he stands 50 yards from the mother by the trap and understands 3 things at once. She is in pain, she is dangerous, and she has not left her pups, even though she could have pulled the trap and herself into the trees to die alone. He doesn't know their den. He will never put that on camera even if he finds it. He only knows that there is a line running through this moment from his front door to this fence, and that every lesson anyone ever gave him about right and wrong is asking to be tested. He checks his pockets. Phone. A dead battery icon stares back, cold kills charge. He has a small multi-tool, the kind you get for chores, not for heroism. He has a scarf. He has a voice that might, if used the right way, be almost a lullaby. He also has a rule he repeats to himself like a prayer. Don't touch wildlife. Call professionals. Keep your distance. Be small. The wind is changing. The pups push closer to their mother's belly, 3 commas shifting toward the warmth of a wounded claws. What he does next won't make him a rescuer. It will make him a witness who chooses carefully. Distance is the first decision. He keeps it. 50 yards. Then 40, easing to the wind's shoulder and never on a straight line, never faster than a tree's sway. He speaks once a syllable with no sharp edges. Hey. The word goes out and dissolves in the cold. The mother's ears pivot, but the rest of her is stone. Pain makes statues out of even the wildest things. The trap's chain is anchored to a buried stake near the fence post. Whoever set it knew where animals funnel along the meadow's edge. Illegal here, the boy remembers. You don't need to see a law book when the proof is in front of you and bleeding. He squats behind a stump and takes off a glove. He places the glove on the snow in front of him, palm up, fingers open, nothing in it. "Hey," he says again, not to coax, but to announce to keep from startling a body wired for ambush. The pups don't cry. Their silence is its own skill. There is a way to make a trap, let go. He's watched the ranger's video metal pedagogy for a worst day. But knowing the mechanism and surviving the moment are two different languages. His phone is dead. The nearest neighbor is 1.5 miles, as the crow flies more as a boy walks. He tries a different language, one he learned by accident the previous winter, when the neighbor's dog got a snare around its neck, the language of doing the thing you can do, then stopping before you do the thing you shouldn't. He steps to the fence post's long shadow. He uses the shovel end of a broken fence stretcher left by some forgotten hand to probe the snow by the chain. The mother growls low as a generator. He freezes, waits until the growl turns into the tight breathing of pain again. Then he uses the tool to uncover the chain's first link. The pups watch with a seriousness that looks like judgment. He pretends not to notice. He wants to pry the jaws apart. He doesn't. He knows hands get bitten when they aim at miracles. He needs leverage. He needs distance. He needs a way to keep the wolf from lunging with the little reach the chain allows. He finds an angle. He feeds the broken stretcher through the trap's yoke near the spring levers and tests a slow, even pressure. The metal shifts a half inch and locks his breath in his throat. He eases back. Not yet. "Okay," he tells the air. "Okay." The wind steps up a gear and blows his scent into the mother's face. She lifts her lip. No theater, just information. The boy lowers his eyes, not submission exactly, but a refusal to turn this into a contest. He takes off his scarf and ties it to the stretcher's handle, making a longer lever. He loops the other end around the fence post for a crude block and tackle. He plants his boots and leans his weight while keeping the post between his body and the wolf. The trap gives a fraction. He stops. The mother lifts her paw in the millimeter the springs allow and then collapses back with a short, almost surprised sound. He tries again, slowly. The lever moans, the post complains, the chain sings. The jaws open a finger's width, then the scarf slips. The handle slaps his knuckles and he tastes copper. He keeps his voice low. "Okay." There is a smarter plan. It begins with a phone call. It continues with a waiting circle, and trained hands and sedation protocols, and paperwork, and the long-term truths that follow wild animals wherever people notice them. He believes in that plan. But the cold is an index of hours. The wolf has already spent too many. He makes the call anyway, even with an empty battery, because sometimes the point of calling is to leave a trace in yourself that you tried to do the right thing first. He presses power. The screen frowns, then flickers, then Miracle 1 red bar that's more a rumor than electricity. He dials the hotline number from the leaflet, thumbs shaking. It rings. A recorded message asks for details. He whispers them, location by reference, not GPS. Description of the animal. Description of the trap. The fact that he will back off if help is close. The battery dies while he's still talking. But the words have been said. He ties the scarf again, doubles the knot, seats the lever. Deeper, braces his shoulder against the post, and leans with everything a 15-year-old can be when no one is watching, stubborn, precise, careful, fierce. The trap opens to the width of a palm. The wolf lifts her paw and pulls free, then stumbles not at him, but past him, as if the night itself were a door she must reach before it closes. She makes it 3 steps and then stops. The pups surge and press into her chest. She drops her head over them like a roof. The boy lowers, the lever breathes once, twice, and waits for the part where he pays for his courage with punishment. But the mother does a stranger thing. She shifts 2 steps sideways, so the fence post is now between her and the wind, and the boy on the windward side finds himself in a bubble where air is less cruel. He doesn't move. He doesn't speak. He just stands in the lee her body makes, and for a minute, that contains many minutes. Predator and person occupy the same plan. Keep the young warm. When she finally lifts her head, the boy takes his cue. He backs away along the line of his own tracks. The pups don't make a sound. The mother watches until the trees take him. Then the night swallows the meadow's shape, and the wind carries the news across the ridge. One danger gone, others waiting. Morning redraws the map. Where the night was about Fear Day is about facts. Tracks that tell timing, blood that tells severity. The arc of a retreat that points to cover. The boy returns at first light, not to intervene, but to observe from the tree line with binoculars on a borrowed tripod, the only way to be close and far at once. He's looking for 3 kinds of signs: mobility, vigilance, and appetite. Mobility. The mother can put weight on the freed leg irregularly, but not catastrophically. Vigilance. Her head rides high ears, switching between meadow and forest, while the pups alternate between nursing and sleep. Appetite. A vole tunnels under the crust. Her head tilts. The tunnel goes quiet. Hunger is a clock that never stops. He sets out a camera trap on the fence line facing away from the family. An outward alarm, not a spy on their denning life. He masks his scent with the crude alchemy of pine boughs and creek water. He marks the spot on a paper topo map, not a phone, because paper tells fewer tales if lost. Back at the cabin, he pulls the sanctuary card from the shelf and studies the list of services, education, hotline routing, rehabilitation, when permitted by state law. He calls from a landline at the small general store. A woman answers on the second ring, voice low, like someone trained to keep frightened creatures from bolting. He doesn't say where the wolves are. He says what he saw, what he did, what he didn't. The woman listens the way professionals do for verbs. She gives him verbs back: monitor from distance, document with timestamps, report any sighting of limping infection signs or abnormal aggression to the state officer whose name she provides. She thanks him for not touching, for not filming in a way that would make a den vulnerable to people who collect locations like trophies. Sometimes the best help, she says, is restraint. He writes that down, even though he knows he won't forget it. For 2 days, snow resets the valley to blank, then offers its text again. The camera trap catches intrusions at the fence: a fox, a pair of mule deer testing the buried ditch. Human boots, different tread patterns than before. He prints the frames at the library and hands them to the officer in town. The officer's eyebrow makes a small mountain. "We'll take a look," he says, non-committal, only in tone. His coat is already on. The boy learns how the pups practice being wolves, first in miniature, then in earnest. They play stalk pounce with each other's tails. They discover that snow's crust sometimes holds and sometimes swallows you whole. They learn that the ravens above are both rivals and housekeeping, Finno's unwitnessed for long, and carrion is a kind of communal ledger. At dusk on the 3rd day, the mother stands and tries a longer walk along the edge of the spruce. Her gait is a paragraph with a limp in the middle, but it reads as healing, not collapse. The boy feels something ease inside his ribs. He is not their friend. He is not their guardian angel. He is a neighbor with binoculars and a moral stake. He repeats this out loud, like it's a spell that keeps both them and him safe. Storms draft across the week like unedited pages. The boy chops wood with a rhythm that keeps thoughts from getting tangled. He checks his trapside camera, replaces batteries. Scrubs metadata before anything leaves the card. He writes in a notebook, dates times, behaviors. Once he notes Song 0516. It means the valley's anthem is back, the evening chorus rising from the slope beyond the meadow. Sometimes the mother answers. Sometimes she's silent, head cocked, as if listening for a sub-frequency humans can't hear. On the 6th morning, he finds Prince. He doesn't like a big domestic dog, off-leash claws, splayed running a line straight through the meadow as if drawn by a string. He visits the owner later without being asked by any authority, just as a kid who understands what a rescue can cost. He brings cookies he baked from a mix and information printed from the ranger website. He speaks quietly the way he imagined the sanctuary woman would. The owner squints, then blushes, then says, "We'll leash. Nobody needs a mess." That night, wind stacks snow like surf against the cabin. The boy reads until his eyes swim, field guides a battered paperback about a photographer who learned to listen before he learned to click. Somewhere near midnight, a single howl threads the storm, then another on a different key. He turns off the lamp and lets the house rediscover the dark. The song isn't frightening anymore. It's like a neighbor running a generator during an outage, evidence that someone else is out there making do. On the 9th day, the officer calls. They've been patrolling the fence lines. They found disturbed ground that looks like trap resets. They didn't find traps. Maybe word got out, the officer says, not asking how such words travel. You did right to report. The officer doesn't ask for the wolves' location. The boy doesn't offer. Trust is a bridge you build from both banks. Late afternoon, the mother tests a small hunt, a snowshoe hare with a bad sense of geometry. The chase is brief. The lesson to the pups is longer. The boy keeps the lens wide, never pushing in on blood. He's making a record, not a reel. Predation is part of the ledger. The camera sees only what he allows it to, and ethics are the difference between bearing witness and stealing. A week folds into another. The wound looks cleaner. The gait looks closer to normal, though the leg will probably carry a memory for a season. Then, the valley conspires to stack danger on a single page. A warm front sluices over the ridge, and with it come smells that wake appetites across species lines. A pair of young male coyotes ghosts the periphery, testing the family's edges. A golden eagle low circles, gambling for inattention. And from the far timber, a different set of wolf voices answers at odd intervals. Not chorus, but question transients, or a neighboring pack drifting near the seam of territories. The boy feels the tension, the way a barometer feels, weather, quiet, measurable. He cleans the stovepipe sets aside, extra water, writes 2 new numbers on the inside of the cabinet door, the officer's direct line and the sanctuary's after-hours emergency. Evening is a glass that can shatter into events. Evening comes thin and metallic, the kind of sky that makes snow squeak under boots. The boy checks wind distance exits, rituals that keep courage from turning into carelessness. Across the meadow, the mother rises and tests her weight. The limp is smaller, but winter is not. It sharpens. It reveals. The first sign is birds, ravens stitching low, not in their usual lazy algebra, but in urgent little dashes. The second is silence where the creek should murmur. Ice has seized the riffles into a glass throat. The third is a smell carried hard on the wind iron and old leaves, and the sourness that means something large has died. Carcasses are magnets. They collect weather and argument and teeth. Wolves know this. So do coyotes. So do the 2 young mountain lions the officer said had been ranging the ridge last month. Tonight, the magnet pulls harder than caution should allow. The mother threads the spruce edge nose, skimming a seam of scent. The pups follow in a braided line. The boy, half a football field away, lifts binoculars and keeps his breath in his throat where it can't fog the glass. He doesn't want to film a lesson paid in blood. He wants to witness the math of survival and leave it intact. They find it at the meadow's elbow, an elk ribcage sprung open like an old accordion, steam rising weakly. Coyotes slink at the periphery, a chorus of almosts. The mother advances head low, tail level, no bravado, just authority. The pups pinwheel with the greedy seriousness of children at a door they're not quite allowed to open. The first coyote tests the radius and is rebuked with a darting feint, no contact, just geometry, well drawn. The second hangs back and does coyote arithmetic, little risks multiplied by hunger. Then the equation changes. From the lodgepole shadows, a shadow longer steps lion. Thin, young, shoulder twitchy, the way apprentices are, but with the hardware of a myth. Long tail loaded, 4/4 eyes that do not blink because cats are patient even when they're reckless. The coyotes melt sideways, suddenly devout believers in someone else's god. The mother puts herself between the lion and the pups, black silhouette cut from the night. The boy feels the air around his ribs get tight as a bandage. Cats read posture, wolves read distance, pups read their mother and try to be small. The lion doesn't charge. It drifts testing angles, learning how chain links connect. The boy lowers his binoculars long enough to find the officer's number on his paper note, then lifts the glass again because the next 10 seconds might redraw everything. A sound interrupts the math, a long, layered howl from the far timber, then another closer. It's not the mother. It's not the pups. The boy knows the chorus now. This is different. This is the valley answering itself. This is the echo becoming voice. Two adults ghost the tree line on the meadow's north lip, far enough to be shadows, close enough to be facts. The lion sees them first, or maybe feels the way the meadow changes shape when a pack's perimeter inflates. Predators don't like being prey to information they didn't control. The cat gives one last low growl, a note the boy feels in his molars, and withdraws uphill so quietly, the snow apologizes as it reforms beneath its pads. The coyotes return to their math and decide church is over. They edge in opportunists with graduate degrees. The mother wheels once a slow-motion accusation. The newcomers hold. Then, astonishing to anyone who loves tidy stories, the mother does not fight. She gathers the pups nose to flank and gives way with the humility of a general who values tomorrow over a paragraph of glory. Survival is not a speech. It's choices that look like retreat and turn out to be wisdom. The boy exhales only when he realizes he's been borrowing breath from the trees. He records a few seconds for the record, not the real silhouettes, no gore, no triumph. The chorus builds again, not a battle song, but a roll call from the ridge. He doesn't know what tomorrow brings. He does know that tonight, the pack is larger than his fear. News moves differently in small valleys. It travels by boot, by rumor, by coffee. A rancher posts a shaky phone video, just snow and a far set of ears, and captions it with a location that is part joke, part map. By noon, the cafe has opinions. By evening, a pickup idles too long at the trailhead. The officer calls, "We've increased patrols. Please, as before, no locations online." The sanctuary emails, a checklist, revisit non-lethal deterrence, summarize observations with times no GPS, never feed, never habituate. The boy prints both and pins them inside the cupboard like prayers. Then the knock comes. Two men in coats with logos, but not the states, ask straight questions with crooked edges. "Heard you care about wolves. Heard you seen some things." Their smiles are the kind adults use when they think kids are closets full of loose talk. The boy says what his notebook can survive in court, that wolves exist, that winter is cold, that he reads the library flyer. He doesn't lie, he subtracts. The men leave without leaving, which is to say they drive off, but their interest stays. A neighbor corners him at the gas pump. If they take a calf come spring, you think your videos will sing the same tune. The boy nods because nodding is sometimes camouflage for complicated truths. Coexistence isn't a bumper sticker. It's budgets and fences and dogs that don't roam. At the library talk, the Q&A turns to heat by question 3. A woman whose goats were harassed speaks of lost sleep and thin margins. A biologist outlines fladry lines and husbandry improvements. A ranch hand mutters about keyboard activists and returns to his seat heavier. The boy listens. He has less to defend when he remembers everyone is protecting something. Online, a stranger DMs asking for den coordinates for research. Another offers money for early access to footage. The boy deletes the messages, then deletes the app. Privacy is not secrecy. It's a shield you hold up for someone else. A week later, an officer posts a notice illegal trapping fines escalated. Hotline staffed 24/7. The pickup returns to the trailhead and leaves again after 20 minutes, as if patients had called in sick. Then, an unexpected tension, an animal rights blogger lifts a still frame from the boy's wide shot and writes a headline with too much certainty. Local teen saves wolves alone, while officials do nothing. It travels fast because outrage weighs nothing. The sanctuary calls first not to scold, but to align. They post a correction collaboration saves animals. Restraint is action. Location withheld to protect the family. The boy answers 3 polite questions by email and declines all interviews. In the mail, real mail with stamps, the boy finds a letter from a 5th grade class 2 towns over. They've seen the sanctuary's educational thread and written in pencil about science and feelings in equal measure. One line stays with him. Sometimes help looks like waiting. The calves will come in spring. So will tourists who think wilderness is a theme park. So will more nights that ask for courage. The law has a long memory. So does the land. For now, the valley arrives at a tense truce made of watchfulness and weather. The snow softens and collapses along the fence lines. Willow tips redden with sap. Tracks go from crisp to smudged, from certainty to rumor. With the thaw comes a different music drip creak. The ripping sound roofs make when they surrender a sheet of ice. The wolves move higher, using the shadowed gullies where winter lingers longest. The mother's gate reads almost even now, like a story that found its missing paragraph. The pups are not pups, so much as apprentice hunters, long-legged, curious, tuned to every algebra of scent. The boy knows what the biology books say: wild things are not ours to keep. He repeats the line until it doesn't feel like loss. On the evening that decides the shape of what comes after, he walks to the edge of the meadow and stops at his old distance. He doesn't call. He doesn't try to be seen. Choice is better when it isn't invited. The chorus lifts from the ridge, 3, maybe 4 voices braiding a single line. The mother answers once a short declarative phrase. The almost grown pups ping back with shy syllables. The boy smiles without meaning to. They sound like kids interrupted while playing. Then, the thing he thought he wanted but is not ready for, the mother steps from the spruce and pauses with her body angled toward him, not closing, not fleeing. Wind blows from her to him, so his scent cannot explain this moment. She lowers her head and breathes out a long, controlled breath that smokes in the cooling air. The pups mimic her without knowing why. He remembers the night she stood between him and the wind, and how it felt like standing inside a decision. He wants to say thank you. He doesn't. Language is a kind of litter if you drop it in the wrong place. From the far timber, a call rises closer, now urgent, but not panicked. The mother pivots. The pups look at her the way all children do when the future calls. with trust that borders on holiness. She moves. They follow. The boy lifts a hand the way people do at train stations when the window is already sliding by. He lowers it. The silhouettes grow smaller in a way that hurts and heals at the same time. At the crest of the saddle, the mother stops and turns. It is not theatrics. It is census count, the young count, the threats count, the strange boy who did not turn danger into a trophy. Her head tilts half a degree. Then she vanishes into thicker trees where the chorus originates. The meadow afterward is louder somehow. Water finds its old channels. Air rises from the snow with the faintest smell of soil. The boy stands until the stars prick the sky and the first early mosquitoes explore his coat clumsy with cold. Goodbye is not a word he decides. It's a distance you respect. The snow softens and collapses along the fence lines. Willow tips redden with sap. Tracks go from crisp to smudged, from certainty to rumor. With the thaw comes a different music, drip creak, the ripping sound roofs make when they surrender a sheet of ice. The wolves move higher, using the shadowed gullies where winter lingers longest. The mother's gait reads almost even now, like a story that found its missing paragraph. The pups are not pups so much as apprentice hunters, long-legged curious, tuned to every algebra of scent. The boy knows what the biology books say: wild things are not ours to keep. He repeats the line until it doesn't feel like loss. On the evening that decides the shape of what comes after he walks to the edge of the meadow and stops at his old distance, he doesn't call. He doesn't try to be seen. Choice is better when it isn't invited. The chorus lifts from the ridge, 3, maybe 4 voices braiding a single line. The mother answers once a short declarative phrase. The almost grown pups ping back with shy syllables. The boy smiles without meaning to. They sound like kids interrupted while playing. Then, the thing he thought he wanted, but is not ready for, the mother steps from the spruce and pauses with her body angled toward him, not closing, not fleeing. Wind blows from her to him, so his scent cannot explain this moment. She lowers her head and breathes out a long, controlled breath that smokes in the cooling air. The pups mimic her without knowing why. He remembers the night she stood between him and the wind, and how it felt like standing inside a decision. He wants to say thank you. He doesn't. Language is a kind of litter if you drop it in the wrong place. From the far timber, a call rises closer, now urgent, but not panicked. The mother pivots. The pups look at her the way all children do when the future calls with trust that borders on holiness. She moves. They follow. The boy lifts a hand the way people do at train stations when the window is already sliding by. He lowers it. The silhouettes grow smaller in a way that hurts and heals at the same time. At the crest of the saddle, the mother stops and turns. It is not theatrics. It is census count, the young count, the threats count, the strange boy who did not turn danger into a trophy. Her head tilts half a degree. Then she vanishes into thicker trees where the chorus originates. The meadow afterward is louder somehow. Water finds its old channels. Air rises from the snow with the faintest smell of soil. The boy stands until the stars prick the sky and the first early mosquitoes explore his coat clumsy with cold. Goodbye is not a word he decides. It's a distance you respect. Here's what the valley taught, distilled to what endures. First, fear is not the enemy, ignorance is. Wolves are not symbols. They are systems, families, roles, roots, rules. When you learn the system, you stop arguing with stories and start negotiating with facts. Second restraint is a verb. Not approaching was an action. Not posting a location was a shield. Calling first, even when help was uncertain, was a way to keep the circle unbroken between field law and care. Third coexistence is arithmetic and empathy at once. It costs time, thought fence repairs, leashes, better husbandry, slower driving. At dusk, patience in meetings where everyone is tired and someone is loud. It also pays out in a quieter ledger, fewer tragedies, more mornings, where howls are music, not headlines. Fourth, heroism in the wild looks smaller than movies suggest. It looks like wide shots, clean metadata, and a kid who learned to step back so the story could step forward on its own terms. If this story moved you, let it change a habit, not just your mood. Learn the hotline number where you live. Support accredited sanctuaries and science-based coexistence groups. Leash your dog near habitat. Drive slow where deer step through dusk. Correct a rumor with a fact gently. And if a sound ever finds you in the dark and asks you to listen, remember that listening can be an act of protection. We'll see you in the next episode, where we travel to a different edge of the map and ask a new question the land is already answering. Until then,